The conference of 1783 is chiefly famous as the one at which Jess Lee received on trial into the traveling connection. Few men were more active and prominent in the early American church. As the first historian of Methodism and as the founder of the stations in New England, he has become known to latter generations. Witty, eloquent, of commanding personality, and filled with the Holy Ghost, he was perhaps the most effective man in the itinerant ranks in his day. He barely missed election to the episcopacy in 1800, and it was he who, as early as 1791, first sketched a plan for a delegated general conference. This was 17 years before Sulla drafted the Constitution of Methodism. Lee and Asbury were strikingly unlike in mold and temperament, but they were able to cooperate in many great enterprises. Yet, alas, too often their differences of mold and temperament caused unhappy misunderstandings to arise between them. Asbury's circuit widened each year until it reached the limit of possible movement in that primitive time. Judging from his journal, however, the year between the conferences of 1783 and those of 1784 seems to have been an exception. Nevertheless, he covered much the same ground in Virginia and Carolina as he had in the previous year, and but for an ulcerated foot, he would have crossed the mountains into the lands of the Holston. He had previously visited the stations in the north, including New York, from which he had been absent for several years, and which had been without a preacher during the British occupation. A few months prior to his visit, John Dickens had been sent thither to renew the work. Coming events were now casting distinct shadows. A letter came to Asbury from Mr. Wesley in December, appointing him to be general assistant, a position which he had been filling by election of his brethren since 1780. Either through this letter or other medium, intimidation had been given of Mr. Wesley's maturing plans. It was known that he was asking ordination for his preachers at the hands of the bishops of the establishment. Indeed, the denouement of the Christmas conference would no doubt have occurred in 1782, except for the refusal of the Anglican prelates to lay hands on diplomaless Methodists. Thus, the secret of the failure of Methodism to remain an adjunct of the Anglican Church was a matter of Greek roots and sheepskins. A mess of pottage changed the history of the ancient world and made the Jewish Church possible. Providence is wiser than men. The conference met in the spring of 1784 in the confident belief that the deliverers of the long-distressed societies was near at hand. Mr. Wesley's letter was laid before the two sittings, and all were happy. The conference was now united, compact, and dominated by a spirit of absolute devotion. The members had been described as men, dead to the world, and gifted and enterprising to the things of God. The number of members reported in society lacked but a round dozen of being 15,000, with 93 itinerant preachers. This conference practically closed the colonial period of American Methodism. The history-making Christmas conference was but 7 months off. And how many verses of various scriptures have laid the point? They make a plan, but God makes a plan. And God's the best of plotters. So circumstances arise for different things than we planned out to. Come on.